Let me see if you're just jumping on, we are just doing our intros quickly in the chat box. Welcome everyone. Glad you could be here. Sure, everyone is yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Monday is when you come back from wait, John, what do you call them? Tuesday Mondays? Tuesday Mondays are always kind of a real special challenge. So thanks for being here. I know it can be a little hectic coming back. Thanks. I'm going to share our agenda today. All right, John and Hillary, you are the people I can see. Are you seeing my agenda? Great.
Since you're recording, I'll say yes.
Great. Helpfulness recorded. So today we're going to, again, just doing our greetings and chat box intros. We're going to welcome Hillary, who's come on as a new hub coordinator at the ELD. Take some time to do some appreciations and shout outs. We'll talk about grants and updates, and then Cassandra has a really quick ledge update for us, and then we're going to spend some time looking at an early learning hub fact sheet that the ELD has been editing. There was a previous version a few years ago, which some of you probably have or have seen, and get some feedback from you on what you would want that to look like, what's good, what's missing, if there are uses for it that you can imagine that might require a different version. We can talk about that too. And that'll be our meeting unless anything else pops up along the way. Also wanted to put out there a plug. I have been just had like a quick back and forth with Lisa and Dorothy, I think one or two other people, about making sure that we have input from you all as hub leaders out in the field about what you would need to see on the agenda or would like to see. So please feel free to reach out to Hillary and Michelle and I if there are things coming up that you would like to talk about, or as things pop up, if you're like, can we please use time in the meeting? We're happy to do that. So sorry, I'm hiding buttons under my Post-its. So I did want to welcome Hillary Bankowski is come on as our second early learning hub director at the ELD. You had a chance at our last meeting to meet Michelle Lewis Barnes, and Hillary is her counterpart. So as you know, we about a year ago had both Denise and I as the early learning hub coordinators, and so we have now just fully replaced Denise and I's positions as hub coordinators. So I will let Hillary introduce herself and tell you a little bit about where she's coming to us from.
Thank you, Carmen, and it is so lovely to be here. I am so excited to see some faces. I've been emailing some of you, so it's nice to meet you virtually. Just a little bit about myself. I have my master's in teaching and early childhood education and elementary ed. I taught health education in the Peace Corps. I taught English in South Korea, and I've taught preschool as well. And the last few years, I made a bit of a shift, and I've worked in program coordination. I was a Safe Routes to School coordinator. And then I also worked in youth career exploration. And I don't know if any of you have worked with teenagers, but they are just a whole different show than preschoolers. And I just realized that was not the show I wanted to be a part of. So I decided to go back to where my passion is, and that's really around early childhood education and just how important it is. And my hope is like a culture shift so that everyone sees how important it is and how important the work that all of you do is. So I'm really excited to be here. So this is going to be my 4th week. And I have to say, I've been telling Carmen, I'm so excited about this job. The hubs are doing such amazing work. I was watching the Early Learning Council meeting, and I saw some of the presentations around the cross-sector work. And then I've been reaching out to some of you about those one-pagers. And it has blown my mind the way that all of you have taken that work in all sorts of different directions that have really that's helped all families and children to be successful. So that's where I'm coming from, just a place of really a lot of enthusiasm and excitement for the work that you're doing. And I'm ready to dive in and see how I can help you out. So thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. It's awesome to have your enthusiasm around that. And yeah, Hillary has some great experience in that kind of cross-sector work and building those partnerships. So excited to have her on board and be able to share those skills with us and to work with you all and support your work. I am going to be emailing out to every hub and setting up a meeting with myself and you, and then either Hillary or Michelle, depending on who's going to be assigned as like your primary early learning hub ELD contact. We'll meet together a couple of times, and then I'm gonna have them be your primary liaison. Of course, I'll always be available to you and you know how to reach me. So, and I think what we'll also do at that time too, we'll put out, so let me start the sentence again. Sorry, it was a long weekend. Michelle is putting together a directory for us of hub staff. So taking all the staffing plans that you did for us and compiling that into a directory to see who does what where and contact information. So she'll probably be reaching out to some of you if she hasn't already to get additional information if needing different phone numbers or anything like that. And we're planning to also have a page that's part of that directory of internal ELD staff who are related to hub work. So we'll do some spelling out of roles of who does TA and such, so that you'll have that reminder there and your staff can have that too. And yeah, looking to go forward from there, receive some requests via the KPI team at PSU. And Diane Reed specifically and Isabella about having maybe like a KPI, kind of like a cohort or like some meetings that we would put together for you in order to share KPI practices, questions. Yeah, so we're gonna work on that too. Curious to see what other ideas you have coming when you get that directory and see all of the staff and work and how there might be other professional connections to make. But that'll go out, and so not only will you have either Hillary or Michelle assigned you as primary liaison, but you'll also be able to have a helpful reference sheet for who else is involved in support for you on our end. All right. Does anyone wanted to save some time for some appreciations and shout outs or good news from the field? Does anyone have something that they just want to share with the group that's going really well, or an appreciation for someone?
Carmen, I'll go. This is Brenda in Central Oregon, and I just had the extreme pleasure after a year and a half of talking about this and trying to figure out the ins and outs about how it would work, to have participated in the first ever Paulina Post School Readiness Open House with parents last Thursday. And so it is a small but mighty number, and all 8 families of 3- and 4-year-olds showed up to see the new site last Thursday and are anxious to start here in a week down the road. And that's been a partnership with the school district who's providing the site and who are providing the school meals and snacks around that. And we're going to work on transportation. So not quite there yet with that, but parents are transporting in. And then Bolden Rogan Early Childhood Academy, who is one of our Preschool Promise providers in Redmond, Prineville, and Bend now, are providing the staff and managing that program this year. So they're going to start out 2 days a week for the fall to winter tranche of time. And then they have, are planning 14 weeks of 3 days a week, starting the middle of February through June. So yay.
That's really exciting, Brenda. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm seeing lots of people seconding your excitement in the chat box. Anyone else have anything they feel like sharing today?
Hi, Carmen, it's Kelly Poe. Do you hear me?
We hear you, Kelly. Go ahead.
So I guess what gives me energy, similar to what Brenda was talking about, I've been spending some time out in Unity. I don't know if you would know where Unity is at. They have about 18 students in their K-12 school. 8 of those students are foreign exchange students, and they want a preschool. So they've had a preschool there for 5 years. We helped set it up, and the preschool teacher was ready to retire. So we've been working with that school district to figure out how to create a program that's sustainable as their population, varies between 0 and 5 children in any one class. So anyway, working on it, submitted a couple of grants with a local volunteer, very young mom. And it's just a treat to work with people who want their children to be ready for school. And all the parents from the existing preschool class came together and they said, we don't want childcare. Our kids can stay home on the ranch. What we want is our kids to be ready for school. And so to create that environment that supports them, that's just working hand in hand with the school district has been, it's not easy, and we certainly don't have it all figured out, but it just feels like the work we're supposed to be doing in a collaborative nature. So it's exciting. I don't have the answers, but it's pretty fun to drive out to Unity as often as we have been lately.
That's great, Kelly. I'm sure those families are so appreciative of having your support to pull everyone together that needs to be at the table to get that done. That's really exciting.
This is Margie at Marion and Polk Early Learning Hub. And to do kind of a contrast to the previous 2 examples, we've been doing a lot of work to try to bring the Dolly Parton Imagination Library into being in our largest population community, solely through foundation-based grant funds work. So we've got some really great volunteers who are helping us with it, retired educators, the former state retired librarian, just people who are really passionate about literacy for kids. And so we've launched in 4 zip codes, Olive Kaiser, a major zip code in Salem, and 2 of our smaller communities in Polk County. So, the hardest part in doing the community outreach for that program is having to tell people, I'm sorry, we don't have the funds yet to reach your community. So it's really challenging. If we waited until we could be at scale across the entire hub, we'd wait forever. And so we made the decision to launch with as much as we could in a sustainable fashion, and to continue to work to expand the ability. So it's a lot of dedicated volunteers, along with a lot of very serious grant writing focus.
That's great, Margie. I've heard such good things about that program. And like, what an incredible thing for someone to do with their celebrity and wealth. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, she's really playing it forward in that her father struggled with literacy his entire life.
Oh.
And she experienced that from a child's perspective and just knew how concerning that was. And to then convert that early experience into something so positive for, not just her community or her state, but, across the globe is just phenomenal.
That's very cool. All right, chat box, what's going on in here? Oh, other people are looking to expand too. Brenda, I don't think there's such thing as a celebration hog. And congratulations on hiring both of your coordinated enrollment team members. That's really exciting too. I feel like this group always has a lot of shared appreciation and celebration for hiring up and being fully staffed, which is really hard to do right now, especially. Okay, thanks so much for all the shared. Oh, there's one more. Jillian. Jillian says, we're excited. Lake School District now has preschool promise. Superintendent Michael Carter has been an amazing partner. Yes, excited about that expansion into that area. All right, I am gonna turn it over to Cassandra.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone had a great Labor Day weekend. And my update is pretty darn quick. So I will get right to it. I'm going to share my screen because I'll stay on track. So David Mandel normally would be doing these updates, but today he just wanted me to share that the government affairs manager position that Troy Duker had been in, he, as you know, I think I let everyone know last meeting that he took another position. And so they have started the recruitment process and it's not finalized yet. So there was no updates in that space this time, but hopefully in October. Sometimes recruiting takes a minute. So that's on that position. And the next, as you all know, everybody's been working very hard on the agency request budget. That it's the first time we've ever submitted one for the soon-to-be Department of Early Learning and Care. So very exciting. I shared the link here and we'll share the slide, but it's 850 pages. And I'm sure that what you all really want to know about this is where is the section for hubs? And so I just want to let you know, if you scroll down to page 616, that's where the hub information will start. And so at your own, after the meeting, please feel free to take a look at that. And that's really the update that I have for today. So if there's any questions or anything, just let me know, or anything you'd like us to pass along to David, since he wasn't able to make it today. And I will quit sharing my screen so maybe I can see more people. And yes, on the chat, absolutely, for the link. I think I have it teed up for you all. Look at that. Cass does. She was on her game today. I don't know how it worked, but I was. School starts tomorrow. I'll have the house to myself. It's quite exciting. You're welcome, Dorothy. Anybody else have any quick questions or need any pass along to David questions or anything? We'll have to do a word search on that 850-page document as like an icebreaker or something at the next meeting.
I don't know that we need to spend any more time in there.
I'm just kidding. It consumed a lot of my week last week. So anyway, on to the agenda.
It was
Thank-
a really huge project for us and becoming Doc that you need this agency like budget narrative. So you can imagine the amount of time that our executive team and others spend in creating such a lengthy and detailed document. It was quite a work in progress. And I saw a couple of those exec members took this week off, and I was really proud of them for giving themselves a break after that. Oh, before I move on to the fact sheet, I almost did. I am afraid that I have a rather non-update update on coordinated enrollment grants. I have not heard when they will be out. It is longer than I thought it was going to be. So I would hazard a guess in the next couple weeks that those will go out. I know that it's creating problems, and I am happy to talk offline with people about challenges and any possible fixes that we can do, and budget questions and concerns. And then their other question, sorry, Molly, what was your other question? It was coordinated enrollment and
It
preschool.
was just like, what's the, like, we can't place kids until providers get their agreements. So like, what's the ETA on that? If you have any idea.
They're supposed to go out this week, I believe, to providers. And then hoping to get them back as soon as possible. John, is that what you recall as well? Or yes, no, maybe?
I was just looking for the latest information because I was off and on last week. So not sure if I have the latest info.
Okay. Begonia, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify something, so with Molly, when you speak about contracts, you mean the expansion, but not the continuation of service? Because I have providers calling me saying that they have not received a copy of the continuation of service. And
Yes,
it was not the
us
case for
too.
just one provider, but several providers. So we emailed the ELD and they were looking into like what happened.
They're looking, just let me clarify, sorry. They're looking to know if they're going to be offered to continue, or they're looking.
No,
for
some
grant agreement?
contracts got lost. Some contracts actually made it to providers. And so some providers
Yes.
also reach out to us because they were under the impression that the continuation, the amendment that is only providing the continuation of service, they thought that it was also the expansion. And so we have to interpret the contract as well for them. And I'm not talking about just one provider.
Okay. If you want to send me a quick email, Begonia, with the names of anyone who's looking for clarity on that or hasn't received paperwork that they were expecting to receive, I can make sure that that gets to the Preschool Promise team as soon as possible.
Thank you, Carmen. They say that actually they will be checking and they will be getting back to them before the end of the last week, Friday, but with the long weekend, things might, get lost probably. So yeah.
Okay. And I know that part of that team was unexpectedly out the end of last week as well. So that could be part of it. Okay.
It looks like, Carmen, there's one more question about a spreadsheet of budget allocations for Preschool Promise in the chat.
Let me jump in there. Or, oh, there we go. Brenda, can you say more about your question? Sorry.
Sure. Sometimes in the past, funds allocated, you've shared in a spreadsheet to all of us about what we could expect. In lieu of or until we get the actual contract documents, is there anything like that existing that you could share? just so we're not quite so far, like I am over my skis with hiring people.
Oh, do you mean for coordinated enrollment of preschool
Mhm.
promise? Okay,
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, for coordinated enrollment.
no, that's okay. So you like how much each person is, you're sorry. Ugh. What the coordinated enrollment grant agreement amount would be for agencies. They have not given us authorization to do intent to award letters on that.
They haven't given you authorization to do intent to award for coordinated enrollment for hubs?
Right, so intent to, yeah. And that's what that is, like, in order to give people numbers, that's what an intent to, that would be part of an intent to award letter.
So do we think that's coming?
No, and they're skipping that part and going directly to just trying to get the grant agreements out to you as quickly as possible.
Do you think we'll have those the same time the providers get their agreements, or are we in a situation where the providers might get their contract and then we actually aren't even under contract to do eligibility and enrollment?
I don't know which order they're gonna come in, and I have raised it to the grants team that those things need to go together in order for the system to work properly and for you to be funded to do the support for Preschool Promise as the grantees receive that entry to the program.
Do you have some sense, Carmen, of what the cause is of they're not yet being ready to share that information? What's the holdup?
It's just time and staffing. There isn't any question that it's going to happen. There isn't a question as to how much the money is going to be. Like, that's all settled. It's just getting it out the door.
But so it'd be great because we don't know the amount yet. And it's hard to budget and hire staff, and it's hard. I mean, like, I have a budget that's going to my board with a fake number in there, which doesn't feel very good. And it just, even just an email that says, we will contract with you, the contract's coming, and here's the amount would be great.
I can ask again to see with our new procurement director if that's something that we can do. But I haven't been able to get that to move at this point. But I absolutely understand the fact that it's well past the time of budgeting and needing that number.
I mean, because I guess if you need some help sort of living this message, I mean, we're all putting our own agencies at risk. And that's not something that the state wants to have happen, right? That's not a message that should be delivered, which is what the message is. It's like, you can put yourself at risk, but so it puts us in a really precarious position. And at the same time, the state still expects that we do the work. And so that's kind of a non-negotiable as well. And so, like, all we're really asking for is some sort of an assurance is coming and the amount of money that we can anticipate. And it seems like it should be doable.
For some of us, Carmen, without that assurance or that number, I actually can't get approval to hire because I'm in a community college that's making cuts right now. And without some kind of guarantee that I have this revenue coming in, I could not hire another person.
Yeah, I absolutely am aware that happens, and especially with any of our publicly funded organizations that are backbones, that they're just not able to take that on, as it's not really fiscally, they do not view that as fiscally responsible to hire when you do not know that there's funds coming to pay that person to go with that posting.
Well, and Carmen, the final damage is actually done to the children, because we've got all these new slots that we really urgently need to have children placed in to get the full benefit of the new resources that have been allocated. But if hubs don't have the ability to hire, then we don't have the capacity in which to connect with those families, to connect those children to those programs. And so, you know, for want of a nail, the battle when the war was lost. I mean, we don't want that to happen.
Right, and the same situation we have with providers that do not feel that they could be hiring before they actually get the contracts. At this point, they might not even have the staffing versus the ones that took the risk without having the funding or knowing about the funding and went ahead and they were successful. They hired people, but it's a high risk. And also now some of them are encountering that there's a huge delay in background checks. So that is also preventing them from hiring the workforce, and some of them are making drastic decisions of reducing the number of slots. No, I'm not talking about Preschool Promise, but other publicly funded program. And at the same time, we are sending this survey about coordinated enrollment in a moment that doesn't feel to me to be the best, because they're going to be slamming us completely. So.
Yeah, that does make the survey more, like, I agree, likely to be less accurate, because the thing that people have on their mind is this one big piece, and it's hard to separate that from the other things that they're being surveyed on. I will reach out to our procurement and grants directors and raise the concerns that you've brought here again.
Carmen, do you want help in that?
I think that hearing from you what the impact is and what it is specifically that, like, your primary concerns are is helpful.
Do you
I don't
want that?
think-
I mean, do you want to do that via email? Do you want to have a special meeting? Do you like, what would be the most helpful format for you?
And is it us reaching out directly to the director of procurement? Like, I don't want to put you in a position where
Right.
you're caught in between what we're like, all of what we're sharing with you. And we know you're advocating for us, but I guess so my question is, like, do we reach out directly to that individual, or are we even the voices that need to hear? I mean, like, is it a governance chair? And like, who's the person that has the potential to make a difference in this? Because I'm not convinced it is going to be us. Unless someone else disagrees. I just.
Are you okay if I think about that and get back to you? I can get back to you by the end of the day. I just want to think about it.
I think that'd be great. And just know that, like, we want to be in help and support to you. And I mean, ultimately it's going to be in help and support to the system overall.
Mhm.
So I think we as hub leaders stand ready to do that. We're not afraid, if you will, to go and talk to people or whatever it might take. But I think also what you're hearing is patience is wearing a little bit thin, and that's not a reflection on you. But it's sort of this continual, we're always having to wait, and then it feels like we're always put then in a position where we have to do things like immediately and in 5 minutes, and we need to break that cycle. And we want to help you and be a thought partner in being able to do that.
And I also just am really sensitive to the, like, when we start, like, if part of the solution here is engaging a governance chair or our backbone organization, being really clear about, like, what position we're being put in as agencies and what position we're putting families in. Thinking about who that person is for me, it's kind of like putting a bulldog on and creates an antagonistic relationship that I don't want to have with the early learning division, any part of the division. And so that's also me trying to navigate, like, how can we help move this forward? Like, who is that voice without creating an antagonistic relationship within the agency, with anyone within the agency?
Yeah, I can appreciate that. But I also do think that governance chairs and backbone agencies who have these grants have the right to advocate to have agreement to our end of the bargain met. But yeah, I understand the sensitivity of wanting to make sure that the relationship is maintained and like seen as partnership as opposed to antagonistic. I don't think that any of the people that I'm talking about reaching out to and talking to would see that as antagonistic. I think that our procurement and grants and operations directors are people who view you as advocates and your organizations and your governance council as people who are doing the work in good faith and who are advocates. I think that's not just like the agency because they're in the agency, but like as individuals, that is their perspective, and they want things to go well for you and for the children that are being served. So but I understand, of course, the need to think carefully through that. So let me think about this and get back to you at the end of the day. I know that you're in a really hard place, and I would really like for that to change. Any other thoughts, questions?
There's two things in the chat. I just want to make sure that we don't miss.
Okay.
Is there any location with public access to Preschool Promise expansion applications or awards so that folks can find it themselves?
Beyond that spreadsheet that doesn't have physical locations or phone numbers, that's the information we need. We can't find some of the awarded providers. They aren't in Spark. They aren't in the white pages. They aren't online. We don't have a phone number or an address.
Okay.
For.
Molly, are you talking about on the ELD website where it has the intent to award?
Yeah, that thing's not super helpful.
Yeah.
But they must, so I don't know, someone told me that the applications were public and that were available somewhere, but or maybe Preschool Promise is going to give us the information we need. This is just so frustrating, Carmen. It just looks like a shit show out there. I mean, it reflects so badly on the early learning division. I'm so sorry. I know people are working really, really hard, but boy, it's embarrassing. So if there's information we can dig, we'll dig, but.
So the intention is for there to be, I think last year was the first year that we used it. There was a Preschool Promise provider dashboard that hubs and CCRNRs could see that had more detailed information. It has like the provider, I think it has location and then how many slots there are. And that is supposed to be updated and out to the public by the middle of next week.
Okay. I mean, if that would be great. That would be helpful.
And Carmen, doesn't that coincide with the appeal process timeline? I think some of the things that we can and can't release publicly have to coincide with the timing of when we've made our sort of final decisions, because there's applicants that are early learning hubs. Could have been applicants that are CCRNRs. So a lot of what we are able to provide has to come at certain points in the procurement process. So I want to be a little sensitive to that. I'm not trying to diminish the frustrations in communities by any means, but just want to mention that has put a hindrance on us being able to freely share as much as we'd like to with our two main funded community partners, which are hubs and CCR&Rs, around how to support some of this work because they're eligible applicants. So just that being said, I think we can still pursue as timely a list of, more key information for you to connect with those new grantees.
I think, John, I appreciate that because I know there's lots of different procurement challenges that are there, and being a hub that is an applicant and a recipient of an expansion, just fully own that. I think just having that information about what's available, why it's only this limited static list versus something else, I think is really helpful, because otherwise what happens is we all are so eager to get going, but then we only have half the information. And so it creates all those. So I think understanding, being really clear from the division's point of view, here's what we're going to give you now, this is what's coming, here's why, would be really helpful.
That makes sense, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful, Lisa. We can get a communication out about that as well. Yeah, and make sure everyone here and those who are not here are aware of our anticipated timelines around the dashboard to share information. I know that everyone is very eagerly awaiting that. And I know that the appeal is 7 days from when it was posted. So as we get to the end of that, we'll be able to share more information. Okay, Hillary, was there one more thing in the chat box?
There's two questions. I'm not sure if you want to handle them now. Talking about the central background registry backlog, taking 8 to 12 weeks to clear someone to work, and that being an issue, and if the ELD is going to be supporting that. And then also a question about preschool promise classrooms becoming a special ed classroom instead of a typically developing peer classroom. Question by Jillian.
Okay.
I'm being asked that. I don't know who to get directed to, but I'm being asked that by one of our Preschool Promise EIECSP providers, that she has to do her federal report to the feds. And, she has to track, are they in a special ed classroom or are they in a typically developing peer classroom? So if they're in Preschool Promise, which she has both, then it possibly becomes a special ed classroom, which means that they're not getting the time with their typically developing peers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I have been working with ODE on this with early intervention, and that 50% like threshold, it seems like there's a bit of it's kind of a misnomer. That is a guideline. It's not a actual designation. You don't become an early intervention special education classroom when you go over 50%. It's suggested that there's a guideline that suggests that that's like right around where, depending on the scenario and the individuals that are in a classroom, that it can be more like a special education classroom than a general classroom, but that isn't an actual like line in the stand. So that isn't like, when in reporting to the feds, like you wouldn't need to say like, oh, we're actually a special education classroom now. I have a lot of back and forth going on with ODE. I know Carol Williams and Meredith Lyons are both people that you've maybe had opportunity to meet in this meeting, if not other places. They are really supportive of helping everyone understand these conversations as well as to problem solve regionally around and to be on the same page around this. I know that that can be a conversation, especially when Begonia has I owe you an email about this also, when there's an issue of like braiding or blending funding in classrooms between Preschool Promise and other funders like ESDs. And we're looking to have regional conversations with you about that. So Jillian and others will have that question. I'm happy to pull together our hub to pull in Hillary or Michelle, as well as our ODE colleagues to talk about what that needs to look like. And they are committed, the ODE is committed to pulling in ESD leaders as well to talk about what needs to happen in terms of support, and also just getting on the same page about those thresholds and things like that.
Generally speaking, Carmen, I think that's a really good idea so that there is some uniformity, if you will, and people's understanding of that. I think, I think we all probably hear it on both ends of the spectrum. So I think it would beget a meaningful sort of understanding of what we can and can't do, what should providers be doing to help to support children and families? How does this tie in to the suspension, expulsion, prevention? I mean, it's all really connected. So if we had some, kind of preschool promise communities of practice around this, I don't know what to call it, but where it is sort of a theme that gets carried through, I think that'd be phenomenal.
Carmen, the problem is like what we discussed before. This is always a moving target, right? As we are doing the enrollment and the placement, the classroom might look in one way. As providers do screenings, 60, 90 days later, the classroom might look completely different, right? So this is an issue that is giving everybody is freaking out and feeling very anxious around this issue for them. This is my 3rd year just hearing about this thing only.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important that we continue to focus on the support that providers need in order to serve all children and to have a classroom environment that is universally serving. So like having things in place so that you are able to adapt as children come in with new needs, with different needs, and not just reacting to children that come in. And I want to say that and you all know, I used to be in a classroom 12 years. I understand the difficulty of making those modifications and learning to understand different children and different families and getting like up to speed on different disabilities and how they manifest with different children and being able to do that. So I don't mean to diminish that at all, but I also want to make sure that in these conversations that we're being really careful to not imply that because a child has a given disability that they will inherently be a challenge or cause that they will cause, like they will need so much extra attention. And I don't mean to say that anyone in this room is saying that, but just like as early learning leaders, it's so important that we keep community partners and providers on that track to think about it in that way that is not ableist, because I think sometimes people can get a little bit caught up in, well, I already have 3 kids who have labels, so if I get 1 more, that's going to be too many. And that really isn't a safe or fair assumption.
It's not, Carmen, and I totally agree with you. And I think that it's also something that, that's why coming together between the division, the providers, the Preschool Promise program, the non-suspension expulsion prevention program, hubs, like that, we're all saying that, because I know here locally, that's certainly the message that we convey to our providers, but it's still also, it is just part of the language sometimes, just to be really honest. And so hearing, because you all are the grantee, like hearing what your expectations are of the grantee directly, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm curious to hear what you think, like, what do you think that might look like in terms of making sure that providers and those that support them are on the same page around that, in terms of like what our expectation is for what happened, how many kids might there be in your classroom that have an IFSP, or like what is the expectation for what happens when someone with an IFSP enters your room, or when they go through the referral process and have that, like, are those like sort of like a follow-up, like secondary webinar that we have for Preschool Promise providers who are new or continuing? Like, we have the like sort of onboarding, like, is that a follow-up conversation? Is it regional? Is it everyone? Like, and I know I'm asking, like, this is that doesn't have to be the full decision and conversation now, but I am curious to hear from you what you think would be.
I mean, from just off the top of my head, I think it's a multi-layered answer. So that's one thing, but I think it's also providers. I think generally it's, if they don't feel like they've got the skill or the tools, they get really nervous. And so that, I think that's part of the conversation. I think it's also a lack of understanding of what services or resources might be available to them as a provider and or to the family. I think there's also some frustration around what services are available, not available. And, you know, and then we can go even deeper around what is the ESD actually able to provide, and where does that happen, and what are the methods, and, you know, people coming in and out of classrooms. I mean, so then it just sort of crescendos from there in terms of, you know, where I think providers sort of come to us saying, I can't have one more, or whatever that is. That feels even harsh saying that, but I think it's not a one and done. And I think it is more than just saying, as the contract holder to your provider, thou shalt. I think it's way more than that. And it's like, how do we as a system really provide the resources both to the provider, to the family, and to the child? And it's not going to be an overnight answer either.
Yeah, and that's totally true, that like some of this is, I agree, like the frustration of like, yes, you can point me toward the resources, but at some point people feel like those resources aren't enough. So that doesn't solve the problem. Even just knowing where the resources are. I mean, we hear that from providers. They're like, yeah, I already did that. Like, I reached out and that wasn't what I needed, or it took too long, or I didn't hear it doesn't solve the problem just to send them to the resources. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with Lisa about how multi-layered it is, because I mean, of course it is helpful to be really clear when you're onboarding programs, what is legally and not legally allowed. We're not going to cap at such and such percentage, right? That is helpful. It's helpful to say, like, here is how the CCR&R can provide support. Here is how the ESD can provide support. And that maybe look different across the different regions, right? Like, what my ESD provides in my communities may look different than what the ESD in other places is able to provide because of how they're set up. And when I say that, both provide, meaning the services they provide for each individual kiddo, but also like, how are ESDs supporting providers in the community? Like, our ESD has instructional coaches and other things that looks different. So it's, I think that's also part of like the system piece that we're dealing with. Like, we're trying to build this system of supports, right? Even with like not discipline, but the, oh my God, mental health support stuff that we're doing. And I can't come up with the phrasing that we're currently using for that, but you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like, we're building that system. ESDs are trying to be more robust. CCR&Rs have PSP supports. And that can also feel really complex to a like childcare program that has a kid in front of them that they're just trying to make sure that they are set up to be successful with that child, right? Like, we're in the process of doing a series of one-on-one meetings with with all of our preschool promise providers, with myself as coordinated enrollment person, with our ESD service coordinator, with our CCR&R person, just like, hey, this is what enrollment looks like so far at this point, at the start of the year. This is how this is what the balance of kiddos look like in your, this is the supports that we have in the system. This is the trainings that the ESD is providing. This is what is in your TNTA plan with the CCR&R. What else, what's like coming up for you, right? And some of the programs are like, that's great. But let me talk about this kid right here that we just met last week on their IFSP. And I really want to get into like those kinds of questions. And that's like, okay, we'll go meet with the ESD about that. Like that's at a really kid level type of thing. So a thing that I am just experiencing is just like programs. We're trying to like lay the land out of like, you're not alone in trying to create an inclusive classroom. We have this system of supports for you. And they want to get down to like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like it's this really interesting tension there.
I do know what you mean. And yeah, I agree. There's a couple of people in the chat box saying GATS doesn't seem like a one and done. I also, yeah, Brenda, what you're saying about steering away from just the IFSP designation and talking bigger about challenging behaviors, because those don't always go together. And that's important to to call out. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, this really just pulls to mind thinking about how it is that we design something that isn't one and done. And John, I'm glad you're here for this conversation today with representing professional learning team. And maybe part of our solution is to think about like, what are the time frames that we know about that are challenging for where things pop up, right? Like it's predictable. Early intervention knows like when it is that you start getting all the calls every year and like when the next wave comes, right? There's one that's a couple months into the school year after September. And then there's like another one that comes after the like winter, like some families are away and then they come back in January and providers are like, wow, this is still a challenge for me that this is happening with this child. So maybe that's part of what we use to design. I'm spitballing to you now, Lisa, off the top of my head, but like maybe that's part of what we need to plan for with our publicly funded preschool programs, is to have scheduled check-in that says like, hey, like, remember when we shared these resources back in September and you were just enrolling and everything was happening, but now like, now what do you need? Now what do you need here? And have that. So we're not leaving it up to providers who are overwhelmed to reach out for that, but that we're actively reminding them of what is out there. Dorothy says doing mid-year check-ins end of January again. Yeah, that's great.
So like as a team, CCR&R, ESD, Hub, we're all meeting with those preschool promise providers again, but I'm in a rural community. I cannot believe that would be I would never have that expectation of somebody that has many more providers than I do, looking directly at Begonia, because I can see your face. And like, that would be harder, I think, to do, because we're not staffed in coordinated enrollment necessarily to be able to in more urban communities, right? Or like thinking about Molly, like her meeting with her team trying to meet with every single, that would, yeah. So I mean, I don't know what the solution is, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that I don't know why I'm saying I think we are open at the ELD to thinking about what our role is in that type of outreach and convening and proactive TA, as well as facilitating conversation with CCR&Rs regionally to say, who do have preschool promise coaches, to say like, here's like what we're hearing over here. How does that reflect over in the TA that you're doing?
And you know, Carmen, now CCR&Rs have the Child Care Advisory Council or committee, so it will be also great to check with providers.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, if the ELD could handle grant
type contracting questions from the providers. I mean, I think we spend 95% of our time dealing with questions we have no answers to from providers around, can I do this? Or if I did that, when will this happen? So, you know, we can handle the early special ed, all that code, you know, that's what we do, community organizing, but we spend a lot of time trying to be the ELD. So if the ELD could be the ELD, it would really free us up to do some good work. But until that happens, anyway, that's what I would recommend. Like, it would be great. Like, here's my dream. What if there were 10 Preschool Promise grant managers spread across the state, and they were based in various hubs, but they were the people that providers could actually talk to, like on the phone or like see face to face. And then they would inform Dana and that team about here's what's going on, or here's what we know, or here's where the struggles are. They had some problem solving power. I think like that would be, anyway, that's my current dream.
That doesn't sound very different to how it was in the past, Molly. Instead of 10, 16.
Yes, but it wouldn't, I know the contracts aren't ever coming back to the hubs, but if there was some, I think what we've realized is that this system doesn't work without some level of local control, without some local organizing and something needs to happen. Or how is this going to grow, you know? So anyway, sorry.
It sounds like an interesting policy option package.
I was also just writing a policy option package in my mind.
Yeah, I think it could be billed as accountability and all sorts of things.
Regional monitoring.
But of course, it'll be 2 years before you could write another policy option package. So that's a long wait.
Well, you never know. There might be something in the works. We'll see when it's public.
Yes. I want to move on, but I also want to talk about the things in the chat box.
I just cut and pasted those into my notes.
I'm cutting and pasting things into an email right now about role clarification. Yeah, Molly, I hear all the things that you said. And lots of that I hear myself thinking also. And yeah, it's a tricky spot for hubs and your coordinated enrollment staff, because you're a primary contact for the providers and do a really good job. And so they have a trusting relationship with you, and they look to you when they need those answers, including grants, which isn't those questions shouldn't be yours to answer. They should be ours to answer. So I think on my end, like, I want to ask that you send people with those questions to us, and that
we do.
You assist us in knowing like when those
we
aren't
do.
We never hear either.
Okay, but like Michelle and Hillary and I like need that feedback to be able to share. Like, last month I sent 3 people and none of them heard back, or whatever, or one of them heard back, or someone talked to someone at the ELD, but their question really didn't get answered and they were still confused. And I know this has been an ongoing thing, but like, I want to encourage you to share with us like what's happening with that, so that we can move it somewhere.
What's the best way to do that, Carmen? Because I personally feel like I have shared that quite a bit, but what's the best way? What would be helpful?
My impression was that it had been like more or less resolved. Like, I haven't heard anyone talk about it in a while. I'm just being honest with you. Like, it's been months and months since I feel like someone said like, hey, we sent someone to the ELD to Preschool Promise. for the question and they didn't hear back. Like, I haven't heard that. So for me, like, I had the impression that I had taken your your needs and concerns to the people in charge of responding, and that that had changed. So now I'm hearing that no, the problem continues. So I just need you to keep communicating that, which I know is maybe doesn't feel like a fair thing to ask for. But we do.
Carmen, I was just gonna say that the coordinated enrollment team meets with Anne regularly, and I know they bring those concerns there. And
Yeah.
so they are getting verbalized, and there is some problem solving happening.
There is some problem solving happening.
But it's like, yeah, if letting you know would make that helpful, we can let the coordinated enrollment teams know to feed it to us, to feed to you, to feed to Preschool Promise or whatever. But you see how frustrating that is? Yeah.
I do see how frustrating that is.
And also, I go to those meetings myself, and what happens is, thank you for sharing, let me get back to you. And then, I've sent several emails saying, where are we with this? And, oh, I've included my team, and, Anne's doing a fantastic job, but then it just seems like the communication loop just stays looped out there somewhere. And then sometimes the answers don't come back. And I think that's the frustration. And then some of my providers keep coming to me because they are so frustrated. They're trying to see if I can do something versus feeling like, that they are at a dead end.
Yeah. And they don't have the capacity in their day to continue that insistent communication. Okay. We need to do better on communication with Preschool Promise providers. Whew, okay, John, you have an update on CBR, on background checks?
Yeah, and for lack of a better way to transition back to something that is also equally frustrating, I just wanted to hopefully not dive too deep into this, but just wanted to give you some reflection that came back from as Begonia and others in the chat were identifying the issue. I wanted to check our current processing times with our background and intake teams. And so I messaged Hope Hicks, who is a person that I'll track down the email address for you all when you've got a really complex one of these CBR situations. She's trying to deal with some of the bigger ones as immediately as she can. But I was curious if it was things around, the FBI check process and things that are a little bit more out of our control. But her reflection was that it's taking currently on average 3 to 4 weeks. So this 8 to 12 week thing, she says the only way that we get to 8 to 12 weeks is if there is a delay in returning the out-of-state paperwork by the applicant. So sometimes the applicants are taking a little bit of time to get their fingerprint stuff through or get their application stuff back. But the other area, and I actually, because going back to the roles thing, because that was my segue. I can connect it to roles. Because people message me and I feel like I want to do something super special to help them, I get into the middle of things that I'm not supposed to talk to people about. And so I started asking how I could support a particular program, not to be named, but in Central Oregon, that asked why their people weren't through their background checks. And I was like, well, let's see what we can do. So again, not to be named, but if there's ever at all a reason why they have to look a little deeper into the any sort of CPS or criminal background related things that might come up in that, it stalls it. And they don't tell anybody what that part is, because that's very confidential stuff related to the individual that is trying to be vetted to work with children, but they want to make sure that they've done their full due diligence. So the 8 to 12 weeks thing, should be, you know, and so I think that narrative is out there because that is happening. Because there are programs that have staff that aren't going to get approved quickly because they have something in their background that's preventing it from going through rapidly. But by and large, it should be more like the 3 to 4 weeks. And so if you all have examples where you believe that there's no way that John could be right about those other situations, then I think that's where Hope is saying that she would like folks to directly connect with her so that she can shed some light on what might be causing any delays. But 3 to 4 weeks is where they're saying they're able to manage it. And that's with actually, you know, short staffing and pre-COVID levels of applications coming in, like 200 applications coming in a week that they're trying to process. And so she's still maintaining that 3 to 4 weeks is where we're at. So all that said, feel free to dismantle me now.
Are we supposed to dispute this thing? I will share the information that you share with us, with the providers that were making this statement, and then they should be checking with Hope, I guess.
Yeah, let me get her email in here because Hope Hicks is the lead of that department and she's offering up her contact info. So I think
I put her email address in the chat for everyone.
Well, aren't you awesome? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Yeah, I didn't want to start a whole debate, Begonia, but I appreciate it because I think that's the bottom line is there are definitely situations where providers are experiencing much lengthier processing time, but hopefully there's more information that they can gain around it. And I thought it was related to the FBI thing, but they get the conditional, you know, there should be the conditional approval somewhere in the midstream, which again, I don't mean it speeds up the process. It allows that the possibility for the person to be working with supervision, but not alone, while the remainder of that check is completed. So thanks for letting me speak more about that. And thank you, Microsoft Teams, for doing something good by connecting me with the person immediately who could answer the question.
Man, I haven't heard anyone say anything nice about Teams in a while.
No, I felt it was necessary to say that.
I'm sure it hurt you. Okay. Look at the clock. Like, you know, 8 minutes to talk about this fact sheet, which I really, really want your input on. Like, yes. I also would like to be able to use this fact sheet during the upcoming legislative session to share with legislators and others in advocacy and policy. So I don't want to put it off until our next meeting to work on it. So I have emailed all of you the fact sheet draft. There's space in it to add one more small section. And there are spaces where we're hoping to get quotes from you, from staff, from governance, from community members. So you'll see that in there as well. What I would like to do is just have you go to breakout rooms, read through it, give initial responses. ELD members in those breakout rooms will take notes, and then I will continue to take feedback from you and your staff. If you want to email me, if you want to send me like a marked up copy of it. And then also in the meetings that Hillary and Michelle and I are going to set up with you, we could reserve some time to talk about the fact sheets and how you think they need to be edited, what you like in it. And then if you have spaces where you would like to, you think that you have some quotes that could go in there. If you think that format is useful.
Hey, Carmen, I apologize. I was perhaps a little bit distracted. So are we doing two different things in this breakout group? One, looking at the overall sheet that you sent out this morning and the individual fact sheet that I know I got one from Hillary that
Oh.
you guys had started, like.
Sorry, it's just this
and-
one thing. There's an overall hub fact sheet, like one pager that the ELD is putting together that I just sent out like
Okay.
an hour ago, an hour and a half ago. And that's the one that we're talking about, separate from
good.
your cross-sector hub specific piece.
Okay, thank you. Thank
So
you.
we only, no worries. Sorry, I should have clarified. So again, audience is general public, but it's definitely people in policy, advocacy, legislators to understand. And we're open to making another one that's more specific to other audiences if there's another audience that you would like to share with. Like if you're like, this is too catch-all, I need one that's more specific to this or this or this, we can work on that too. We're really short on time, so I'm just gonna send you to breakout rooms, have you look at that. And then go ahead and I think just go ahead and leave from your breakout rooms, so the meeting, so we don't have to spend time transitioning back here again. And we will make a point to follow up with all of you, each of you, to find out what else your thoughts are. Begonia, you look like you have something to say.
Only to Renee.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all for your honest conversation and feedback today. I know that there is a lot of frustration out there. I will follow up with you around how we can best make sure that people are hearing like what the real impact is for you and your organizations and the providers and families that you're serving. And I hope that we can shift just quickly for a few minutes in order to take a look at this and think about how we describe hub work and advocate for it outside of our agencies. Okay, you should be getting invites to go to your rooms.
Hey, Carmen,
Yeah,
I'm purposely like stalking you.
hanging out. Yeah, I've done this move before.
Hey. No, I just want to let you know that we as a group of